Here we are at the portal that Azure.com. So this is the main page to get to uh, administer Microsoft Azure. Now, Azure is huge and there's a lot of services and a lot of stuff over here, but we are specifically going to talk about identities, Microsoft Entra ID. So I already have Entra ID here um, because I have used it before. So I could just basically or I could search right here, right? In either case, and then I can go into Entra ID. So in this case, because I have already accessed it, I'm just going to click on this to go into Microsoft Entra. And we are going to be talking specifically about how to implement Zero Trust with Microsoft, how to start the journey, whether it is Microsoft or any other solutions provider, but um, identities is the new perimeter. So NIST recommendation, Microsoft in general, Zero Trust, the recommendation is that you start working with identities, securing your identities. And that's what we are going to discuss over here. So Microsoft Entra ID, formerly Azure Active Directory, is Microsoft's cloud-based identity and access management service, or IAM. It provides authentication, authorization, single sign-on, which is huge on uh, Zero Trust, multi-factor authentication, conditional access, and other security-related features to secure user identities and control access to applications, data, and resources, right, within a Zero Trust framework. So that's what we are talking here. So once we get into the main portal, so let's talk about a couple of things. We talked about single sign-on, which provides seamless and secure access to thousands of SaaS and on-premises apps with one identity. That's one of the things that you could do over here. So you have enterprise applications. The idea is that all the web applications, whether they are in other SaaS applications like Salesforce, Dropbox, Google, whatever it is that you use, um, that you consolidate everything. So you can register all your applications with Azure so that Azure becomes the identity provider. This is part of the single sign-on. So if a company, the average is that uh, a medium to large company, the employees use more than 15 uh, different SaaS applications, whether they are finance applications, HR, security applications, all kinds of stuff that are needed to conduct a normal business. So applications, as we saw on the third pillar, applications. So applications are the engines that generate anything in the business. You create data with applications. You access data with applications. So applications are extremely important. And so single sign-on, it's really useful. So that's one of the things that you can do over here. And if you have, let's say, internal applications, web applications, you could also use Azure Web Proxy to bring those applications also into Azure to be able to use Microsoft Entra ID as the identity provider. So that's the main idea behind this SSO and zero trust. But obviously, before we work with applications and all that, we need to work with. So when you come to with users, right? So when you come to Microsoft Entra ID for the first time, you're going to come to a page like this. And if you expand the manage section right over here, then there is a number of other sections and subsections that you're going to go to. And the first one, of course, is users. So users are obviously the one of the core components. You need a user account, you need people to work with resources, to work with applications and data and stuff. So here you would see a list of user accounts. So the idea behind um, Microsoft Entra, again, is to provide those accounts, the authentication, to be able to authenticate. And once you authenticate, then you are authorized to do certain things, right? Using the principle of least privilege, in which you are given the permissions, only the permission that you need to do the job that you have to do. So that's one of the things over here. So we talked about that. So here are the users, and this is where you manage all those users. We are not gonna go, of course, on everything about the how. The main idea of this tutorial is to show you the tools and the services, the solutions that you can use in Microsoft to start your journey to um, zero trust. So again, it's managing those. So we talked about single sign-on MFA. It's also configured here. So if you go to the security sessions, and again, there's way to automate all this, and obviously in a big company with many users, you're gonna have to, automation and do things in bulk. If you have, thousands and thousands of users, there are ways to, uh, for example, with conditional access, you can prepare the environment, configure properly, and make sure the users cannot sign in until they register in for MFA. So again, those are the things. So that's why in zero trust, one of the first phases is preparation. You need to have the right environment, the right licenses. You need to have the personnel. You need to have the skill set in place in order to do this. So if you are going to start working with these solutions, obviously you need to train your personnel. You need people that can do this job. So anyway, so here is conditional access that we have talked about. Here you also have the identity protection, verify ID, which is another important feature. But anyway, so we talk about multi-factor authentication to add that extra layer of verification, whether it is a phone or the idea is that you use an authenticator app. Microsoft has an authenticator app. You can use any other app. There are many apps over there, but um, the Microsoft app is also a solution. And if you're using Microsoft, why not use Microsoft solutions, right? So again, so you could do that. So identity protection, we also talked about the privilege identity management or PIM, which provides just-in-time access and approval workflows for administrative roles, reducing a standing privilege. In other words, somebody gets the privilege to do something only for the time that they need. And once that time uh, lapses, then that user, that person doesn't have privilege anymore. And so that is done in the identity governance sections over here of Entra ID. And again, so there's a lot of stuff over here when it comes to that. This entitlement management, lifecycle workflows, access reviews. We also talked about this Um, but here is the uh, privilege identity management. Like, especially remember that PIM is related to privilege accounts. So first, you would create assignments for Microsoft intro roles. You update existing assignment, etc. You would then activate your eligible assignments. So if you are an admin and you are part of PIM, so basically you need to activate whenever you're going to do something. You're going to get an email. Actually, you come over here and you're going to go to this assignment page and you'll see, and then you need to activate. So nobody, when you are part of PIM, you cannot do any administrative task until you activate that role. And there is approval requests and all that kind of stuff. There is auditing. Again, PIM is a crucial part of zero trust. Another thing, component that we talked about in the um, zero trust features with identity was external identities or B2B collaboration. So that's another feature. So you got business, you have partners, you have contractors, etc., the need to access resources in your environment. Well, so this is what B2B is these external, you can either create guest accounts. Those guest accounts could, let's say that somebody already works for a company, and that company, well, obviously you have an account with that company, so I can invite you as a guest. So you will use your own email address. I will set it up, and then you will get an email with that invitation. Then you come in, you accept the invitation, and then I authorize you to use whatever it is that you need to do in my company. That's the whole idea. But again, there's a lot of stuff when it comes to external identities. But those are some of the features, right? We also talked about the application proxy that you create. When it comes to application, you can create um, an application proxy in which the application proxy is basically to connect internal applications. So you have an internal applications running on your on-premises environment. Especially big companies, they have a stuff on premises and they have a stuff in the cloud, or they are moving to the cloud. So, but when it comes to the application proxy, is just to make sure that instead of authenticating um, internally, you use Microsoft uh, Entra ID to authenticate and use this, the concept of single sign-on that we have talked about, that is extremely important for the zero trust framework. Anyway, this is where you would set up something like that. Uh, we talked about the role-based access control, in which the best practice is to basically create groups and then assign roles to those groups. That's the whole idea. Here, for example, you have the global administrator, which is like the king of the castle, has access to everything. The global administrator is one account that you must protect a lot. It's the king of the castle. If a malicious user, if a cyber criminal get holds of a global account in a company, they have access to everything. They can destroy that company, literally. They own the company. Okay, so and again, so those accounts need to be protected extremely carefully. You must, as a matter of fact, Microsoft now is forcing that it is not a choice. You must enable multi-factor authentication. There's a new push now. It's coming. If it's not already, I don't remember the date, but Microsoft is forcing that everyone has to use multi-factor authentication. And actually, this should have been done a long time ago. Not just Microsoft, but multi-factor authentication is so important that nobody should be able to go to any website that support that security related stuff that supports multi-factor without multi-factor authentication. Like, I don't even know what a bank, for example, would allow someone without multi-factor authentication. And then people see all these attacks. 95% of basically all attacks are related to phishing, related to log in with people spoofing impersonations and that stuff. And just by enabling multi-factor authentication, you would reduce that, according to Microsoft, by 99%. So it amazes me that in this time and age, there are companies still that do not use multi-factor authentication. But anyway, that's another topic, another conversation for some other times. And so, um, and if you click on the here, you would see the list of global administrators. You gotta be careful how many administrators, global administrators you have in your company. Microsoft recommends that you have no more than 5 global admins. You should also have a glass break account. You should have an account that is only used for emergency purposes, right? So that if you get locked out, something happens, that you can come in. So again, these are all things that are considered during the zero trust. Okay, we are just going over the basics, but again, zero trust is huge, and there's a lot of stuff that you have to configure, a lot of controls. So we talked a little bit. So that's part of the identity governance again, which is covered right over here. What else? There's a lot more features over here that we didn't cover, um, that are also important for this whole zero trust. Here's the app registrations, etc. But in either case, again, this is just um, a review, a tour, if you want to call it. As I have said many times in this series of videos, in this tutorial, we are going over the what of zero trust with Microsoft solutions. We are not going over the how. The how would take a long time. It could take, months. It could take years for company to implement this zero trust framework using any solutions, right? Usually company use a combination of solutions. They may use, for example, it's very common that a big company uses, big and small, use Microsoft uh, for the as an identity provider, right? They may use other, there are many other solutions out there. Zscaler, for example, is uh, it's a company, and again, so I'm not going to start naming vendors because obviously this is a Microsoft tutorial, and um, we are concentrated. The objective is to, for those companies who have already invested in Microsoft, and people sometimes don't know that they have stuff that they could use to improve the security posture of their environment. So that's the main, the main goal of this tutorial. But anyway, so I hope that this has been informative, that you have at least some of the tools. So remember that when we're talking about zero trust, if you want to start that journey, this is where you need to start. Okay. I don't care where you are in your journey. I don't care where, but this is where you need to start. You need to start with multi-factor authentication. You need to start with single sign-on. You need to, so one of the things that we said, that conditional access is kind of like the heart of the uh, zero trust, uh, it's kind of like the policy engine, if you want to call it. So I don't have any policies here, but you could, here are the steps and how you would go about that, um, and how to monitor. If we go to uh, again, as I said, I don't have any policies, but if you wanted to create a policy, you can start from scratch, or you can create a new from a template. So Microsoft provides a number of templates to create um, conditional access policies. For example, one of the first conditional access policies that you should create is to require multi-factor authentication for admins. As I said, this would be so. If you come to the template section, and there's a whole number of other policies there. uh, we talked about, for example, blocking legacy authentication protocol. You can do that with a conditional policy. Securing security info registration, require multi-factor authentication for all users. So when it comes for multi-factor, you start with the admins, right? Um, and then you can move gradually. Remember, this is a journey. Zero trust is a journey, but you must start somewhere. And where do you need to start? Yes, you got it right if you said identities, and this is how you would do it. All right. Require multi-factor authentication for Azure management, which is kind of related to this, but to the admin stuff. So anyone who's going to be an admin, um, you know, but again, anyone who's going to come to the Azure portal to do anything should be. So these two are kind of related. Require compliant or hybrid Azure AD join devices. So the devices that um, devices in Azure are either hybrid join if you already have a Microsoft Active uh, Directory domain, and then you can hybrid join those devices, or you could, if you don't have a domain, you could just Azure join. You can join your devices to Entra without having a domain, okay? And then you can do a lot of this stuff. Or you could just basically register a device. So there's this hybrid join, there is Azure join, and registration for BYOB, right? People bring your own devices. So if you have personal devices, can be registered, and then you can secure those devices using Microsoft Azure. Anyway, so um, conditional access is a very complex topic, and you have to be extremely careful because you could lock yourself or any admin out if you're not careful with these things. In any case, this is again, as I said, an overview. Um, Hope that you have learned something from this, and I hope that that you continue with me on this journey to start implementing zero trust with Microsoft solutions. Hope to see you next.